If you go to a NASCAR race, you ever notice how the cars are all parked right next to each other? The best officials are your competition, because if they see something, they're going to tell on you. So today we have, I mean, you know, go to a NASCAR inspection today. Because of us cheating, call it what you want, cheating, NASCAR has had to step in, and we have 1,000 templates, we have 100 officials, we have, I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. I mean, but if they don't do it, if they set an eighth, we take a quarter. If they say a quarter, we take a half. I mean, they have to do it. So NASCAR, at the end of the day, draws a line. If I go to the racetrack and I see a car that didn't get through inspection the first time because the fender didn't fit the template or whatever, I don't think they're cheating. I think they're just trying to get a little too much. When the race is over, if the quarter panels are half-inch high, I mean, hey, they were cheating. You know, they were cheating. And so it really is the type of thing that you do. You know, a lot of cars don't go through inspection the first time. They have trouble going through inspection, but you better not have it after the race. And if the back of a car gets high or the roof gets low, then you know, or if the engine wasn't built, you know, then we can talk about cheating.
I had so much stuff. I had a hydraulic porta power inside the car where I adjusted the wedge. I had cool coming into the engine, air cool, nitrous, you know, hydrogen peroxide. I had the big fuel tank I used to have with the electric pump inside it. The tank would hold 28 gallons. You know, you only allowed 22 gallons. You know, it was just this 55 Chevrolet I built. NASCAR, the first race, told me if they could find one thing legal, they were going to pass me. That was at Hickory Motor Speedway. And they found the steering wheel. That's all they found.
Andy Petrie, and I don't know if you're going to talk to him about this, but you should, because he was Earnhart's crew chief for a while, and Andy actually taught me a lot. Some good things, some not so good things. But Andy and those guys, I won't say who he was with because I don't know if they got away with it or not, but Andy and those guys, and he's retired now so I can tell the story, they built a deck lid for Daytona, and they used deck pins that were mounted on kind of an electronic antenna screw, so that when the driver went down the straightaway, he could just push a button and the whole deck lid and spoiler would go down, and it let the car go faster on the straightaway. And then when he came in for inspection, he just raised it back up like a power antenna. So that was pretty cool.
Nowadays, they use precision digital scales that are down to the nth pound, and they're measured at all four wheels, and it's a very sophisticated process. In the old days, in the 60s, NASCAR used to use grain scales and freight scales that really weren't very accurate. And a lot of times what guys would do is they'd load stuff up in the cars that would increase the weight of the car as it went over the scales. There was one case where a guy had a helmet made of lead that he had painted, and the helmet probably weighed 50 or 60 pounds. Junior Johnson used to have his guys carry thermoses in the car, and they'd be filled with mercury. There have been cases where radios have been made out of lead. One of the most famous incidents involved Gary Nelson. He was crew chief for Kyle Petty and did this with Darrell Waltrip also, is they would take 300 pounds or so of buckshot and fill it in the frame rails. And on the opening laps of the race, when they're under yellow on the pace laps, the driver would hit a lever and a door would open up and all these pellets would come running down, and all of a sudden the car would be 300 pounds lighter. And you wouldn't necessarily, they'd all run to the inside because you're on a high bank track where it's going to be rolling downhill. And the genius of it, the real genius of it, was nobody could ever find it on Nelson's cars, and that's because the exit, the door where this opened, was where the car was jacked up. There's a little post where you put the jack and lift the car up on the side, and the door was right under there. So they'd lift the car up and they'd get under it and they'd look and they'd spend hours looking for it, and they could never find it. And that's because he knew they'd be looking for it, so he camouflaged it. It was genius.
I'm not going to mention any teams' names, but there was a team that they built their tires would have like 50 pounds of lead in the right side tires. And on the first pit stop, they would, as soon as they could, they'd pit and get those right sides off. The car would be 100 lighter. They'd have a whole lot more left side ballast. And all of a sudden, here this car would come up through there and he'd drive away.
The coolest thing is you teach guys how to carry the car through, and when you got ready to go, especially checking the weight, the car would have to weigh 3,400 pounds at that time, or 3,700 pounds, whichever it was. You'd have guys designated. All right, this is your corner, this is your corner, this is your corner. Now, if so-and-so looks at you, you know, you got to pick it up. Everybody had to be paying attention. Everybody had to understand that when this was all said and done, the car had to weigh so much and not get caught with your hands on the car. I mean, it was like my hands would be up, but their knee would be on the bumper. My hands would be up. What do you back away from the car? As soon as you backed away, the other guy had to come up and hold the same amount of pressure on it. And you'd work on that.
We had a camshaft in the frame rail underneath the car. So the inspector would bring the cam over, you know, to give it to you, and you'd hand it to you, you know, and he'd stand there and watch it, and one of the guys would walk up and bump into it, and we'd just give a switch, you know. You'd be surprised some of the stuff that was being switched around and this kind of stuff, you know.
Working with the engine was the most common because you need horsepower. And when you was at a super speedway, you had to pull one cylinder head off and they inspect the carburetor and stuff like that. And you put a cheater head on the left side. So you put a legal head on the right. And then when you pull it off for the inspector and you let him inspect the one that's legal, well, then you got to get him to look away or something, and you have one under a fender cover, and you yank the good one out and put it and hide the other one, such as a carburetor. The car had in the firewall had a place where the heater goes. So you take the heater out, and you put a box in there out of aluminum, and you put that thing on with Zeus fasteners. So you got the cheater carburetor in where the heater was. And so they give you time to get the carburetor, they set it there, and then they come back, they'll walk away and go and then come back and seal it once you get it all hooked up and the throttle linkage checked. Well, you switch them, and he maybe just walked to the back of the car. Well, the other one goes in the heater box.
One of the classic feints also is when you get caught with an illegal part, to replace it with one that's equally illegal. Martinsville in the 60s, Fred Lorenzen drove for Holman and Moody, and the rule stipulated a 22-gallon fuel cell, and he got caught with one that was 23 gallons, and the NASCAR inspectors raised all kinds of cane with him, and the Holman Moody guys went back to the truck and said fine, and put one in the car that was 28 gallons, and he won the race.
To run good, to trick somebody, to win a race is a high on its own that I've never found any other way to substitute it. And once you get it, once you feel it, once you find it, it's you just yearn for it again and again and again and again. And that's true. You will go at any lengths to make it happen. Now, NASCAR knows that, because about half of those guys at some point or time in their life were racers. So they know what it's like. They know what that drug's all about. They know what we're looking for. And the ones that do it and do it good from NASCAR's side, they don't take it personal. They know that we're there to trick them and they're there to catch us. And it's almost like a big game.